How's it going, everyone? I'm Walter,
And I'm Jeff.
and this is the Party Killers podcast. So, man, I don't know what's going on with Joe Biden, but his performance in like the last debate, and there was that weird thing where he was like chewing on his wife's fingers.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's be fair. Joe Biden probably has dementia. I mean, he forgot the name of Barack Obama on the campaign trail, and he said,
No, well, I mean,
he said, Mr. President, my boss.
Yeah, no.
I mean, he had multiple opportunities to save himself, and he ended up with my boss.
I don't know, man. Like, I feel bad for the guy, you know.
I mean, I think we're just one debate away from him slipping up and calling Cory Booker Barack Obama.
Yeah, I mean, man. Well, I don't know, dude. I'm starting to think this might be like some kind of like borderline elder abuse, you know?
No, I mean, I don't know why he would want to run for president.
Well,
maybe
here's
it has to just
here's
be megalomania.
Here's what I've heard. I can't. None of this is backed up, but he has a son that died, right?
Correct.
Apparently, now I can't verify any of this. So,
Well,
like,
he
don't
made
take
this
us
big.
serious.
He made this big deal about how if he would be elected president, he'd dump all this money into cancer research.
Well, no. Well,
'cause
here's
his
the
son
thing.
died of cancer.
I think one of the things was, like before he died, essentially, or before his son died, essentially he asked him, like, could you like run for president? You know, and I think that's why he's doing it. Like, I mean, it's obvious. Like, I don't know. Does Joe Biden strike you as like because like he's not throwing much money into the campaign? You know, he didn't even buy up the like Joe Biden for president like web address. You know,
URL,
yeah,
right.
URL. Like, I don't know. He just like his heart doesn't really seem in it. You know.
You know who I'm really excited to see now that he's joined the race?
Bloomberg?
Michael Bloomberg. Love it. Nothing would make me happier than to see two billionaires fight for the highest office in the United States.
So I don't really know much about Bloomberg. I know he was like senator for New York. Like, what's the guy's deal?
Well, one of the big things that I'm aware of is that he made it illegal to purchase a certain size of soda in New York.
Oh, yeah.
You know, pretty big deal.
Man, I bet he's also responsible for all those like ridiculous gun laws there
Pretty
too.
groundbreaking stuff. You know, I would only hope that he would bring something that forward-thinking and revolutionary to the office of the President of the United States.
Damn, because like I mean, what does they even do? Like you get like unlimited refills at like
Yeah,
every fast
exactly.
food
Like-
place now. Why does the size of your soda matter?
Who cares? I mean, you're mayor
No, well, I
of
mean-
one of the largest city in the United States, and that's what you decide to make a big deal in your campaign.
No, I mean besides the fact that you should like treat adults like adults and
Yeah,
let them
exactly,
get whatever size soda they want.
The land
Like
of the free
it's
and
going to
the
be
home of the
completely
brave, yeah.
like it's going to be a completely ineffective piece of legislation. You know, it's not like you're going to prevent people from drinking more soda.
Right.
Yeah, man. But I don't know. I heard he was kind of a centrist. Is that?
Well, I mean, sure. I'm sure he's a centrist in the same way that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden are centrists.
Oh man.
I'm sure, being a billionaire, he has very little interest in the average American person.
Yeah, man.
And
You know,
I think you would be able to tell that by the fact that he doesn't seem that concerned with getting in any of the debates, because he probably doesn't have anything to say that's going to differentiate himself from any of the neo-lib
well,
candidates. that have
man, none
been
of
projected.
like I don't know. I mean, it was nice seeing like Tulsi like
Well,
knock
I mean-
Kamala out, but like really these debates, I wouldn't even call them debates. They're more like panels with like quipping, you know, between
Really,
the panelists.
none of the debates have been beneficial for any of the candidates,
No.
except for the candidates like Bernie, like Tulsi,
Yeah.
and like Yang, because they're the only ones who go up there and say something different from what Americans have been hearing
Well,
for like the
I don't
past
know.
four
I don't know.
federal
Tulsi's been
election
going.
cycles.
Look, I'm going to criticize Tulsi here. Tulsi, like, it seems like her one issue is regime change war, and I don't know. I think after like the Iraq War and stuff, pretty much all Americans from either side can agree that
they're a
we don't
bad
want
idea.
regime change war. You know, I don't know. I mean,
Sure, but instead of, that would be all fine and dandy if things actually changed. But since Iraq, we're currently involved in Yemen, we've had Libya, we're currently involved in Syria, Somalia, Sudan. It didn't end. It only got worse. The only difference is they're all covert wars now
Yeah.
instead of overt wars. And I love Tulsi. I think she's a great candidate. But I don't think
I'm not a huge fan of much of her policies.
I don't think she would be a good presidential candidate. I think she would do it really well in a VP spot.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. I don't know.
I would love to see. I also think Yang would be a really good VP. I would
don't-
love to see
I'm not a
Bernie-
huge fan of UBI. And like, I don't know.
I
Like,
think the idea is a wonderful idea.
Tulsi seems to be good on like stuff like freedom of speech and like reaching across the aisle
and gun control.
Well, I don't know. I think Tulsi is way too left leaning on gun control.
In what regard?
I don't know. She wants to increase gun regulations.
In what it specifically?
I don't know specifics. I just know generally her policy is to increase regulations.
I'm truly, I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat. I just am not aware.
I know specifics. I'm just aware. I made
the ignorant assumption that because she was a veteran, she had more,
Well, I mean, she doesn't want to take away everybody's AR-15 like Beto did.
Exactly.
But like she doesn't want to increase regulations, and I'm not sure that's necessarily a good idea. But also just like other stuff, like I think that any candidate who claims to be like pro-environment should be looking at nuclear power.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Like I don't know, like in the EU and stuff like that, it's basically like, do you think that just because you eat less meat and like pay more taxes, the environment will magically get better? You think that could change the weather?
Yeah, and I think another big thing with the climate change deal is that politicians and media organizations are making this big deal about individual consumers when in reality the institutions that would have the biggest effect would be major corporations.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. There are definitely, I guess, apparent quality of life reasons. Like, but besides whether you believe in like the severity of the greenhouse effect or whatever, there are definitely, like, when I was in Beijing, you couldn't even see across like a 6-lane highway. That was back in like 2016.
China's like the whipping boy for environmental regulations. It's not just there. It's Mexico City. It's all over the undeveloped world.
India too.
Yeah, as they try to pull themselves into like a developed service-based economy, they crap all over their environment.
Yeah, and I think really, I think that putting regulations on the energy sector is. So this is just my personal opinion. So the U.S. contributes. If we were to completely like kill all the livestock in the U.S., like get rid of all the fuel, apparently we'd only be cutting back like 15% of the total global emissions. But like I think, and Dan Crenshaw said something on this, and I fully agree with him. He was talking about how if you really want to solve these problems globally, then what you need to do is focus on innovation, because you're not going to get China or like India to essentially not use coal power because it's just better for them. But what you can do is you have the capability to innovate, to maybe come up with something better that they can use that's more efficient, and they will start using that. I think really the issue of emissions is much more of like an innovation problem.
Sure, I agree with that, and I think it'd be great to look at that as a plan A, but I definitely think plan B should just be let's get rid of the Chinese.
Man, yeah, I don't know. Bad stuff is happening there.
When you think about it, it's just there's internment camps.
Oh my God, yeah.
There's major Orwellian surveillance systems. They're screwing with the global economy.
Well, this is like
they're trying to project their power across the South China Sea now.
Yeah.
Let's just get rid of them, man. Let's just take them out.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. I don't know if I'm ready to endorse a war with China.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm no war. Just let's just get rid of them. Let's just leave them there. Nobody trade with them. We'll see how well they do.
The U.S. is winning the trade war.
Really no natural resources over there. I'd say 20 years they're back in the Stone Age.
I don't know. We'll see. Unless they nuke us first. But like, yeah, I mean, if you look at like Chinese papers and stuff like that, they're ready to go to war.
No, that's what I'm saying.
But I don't know.
They're willing to expand their influence in what they see as their sphere as far as we will allow them to. Before
also there's a lot of like humanitarian stuff with them like torturing the
let's be honest,
Uyghurs,
Let's be honest. The Americans have never really cared about humanitarian issues.
You're right.
We always make it out to be that's the reason why we get involved in conflicts, but in reality,
well, I don't know. You could say the Civil War was fought over humanitarian issues.
Yeah, but you couldn't. I would argue.
No, dude. Okay.
Well, I mean,
Let's sound this argument.
Lincoln didn't really free a single slave, so there's that.
What are you talking about?
The Emancipation Proclamation didn't do anything. In practice, it didn't do a single thing.
He couldn't free the slaves in the South because he didn't want what the Emancipation Proclamation did, or I don't know what this was. But the big I guess policy Lincoln implemented was basically saying that no new states joining the Union could adopt like slavery as a practice.
Correct.
And the reason why is because there was no way. Essentially, there was no way you'd get the South to stop using slaves without a war, which eventually happened, you know.
But I would also argue, really, the big reason why the Civil War happened had to do with industrialization, the growth of cities, and the change of like the paradigm of the United States during that period. I think industrialization in the North was one of the reasons why slavery was so unpopular. But I think slavery ultimately is a drain on the economy.
Yeah.
You get cheap goods out of it, but you lose out on a massive consumer base.
What do you think the war was fought over, if not slavery?
I think it was fought about economics, just like every other war in human history.
Okay, I don't know, bro. I don't know.
I don't think really, anybody was willing to, especially those in positions of power in the United States at that time, were willing to put the future of the Union on the line just because, they felt bad for the plight of black people.
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree. Slavery was an evil institution and needed to be done away with, but for people at that time, I guarantee you they were not concerned about the humanitarian effects, especially those who were in positions of power in the U.S. government. I'd say if you were looking for anybody who, would have supported an institution like that if it benefited their interests, those would be the number one people who would, but it didn't benefit their interests, and therefore they didn't support it.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think there were some pretty good people. That really believe in the cause.
Like your abolitionists.
No,
and your church leaders.
I'm talking about Lincoln.
I disagree.
Okay. Well,
I think especially with presidents who are assassinated.
Look, I think the dude had to play it smart. I think I honestly, you don't think Lincoln wanted to end slavery? Like, okay, you're gonna have to substantiate that.
Sure. So I mean, you're putting me on the spot here because I don't have like a phone or I don't want dead air.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna like grab my phone.
No, dude. Just what have you heard?
But I do remember some sort of quote that Lincoln said something along the lines of, "If I can keep the Union together and not abolish slavery, I will." And the Civil War began because the southern states seceded illegally as a result of Lincoln getting elected, not because he tried to do anything with slavery. It was just simply because he was put into the office.
Oh, okay.
So, and then that being said...
Maybe I hit it backwards or something.
That being said, we then invaded, I'm using air quotes, the South, and tried to take all of the forts
essentially, as I see it as the South was like invaded and occupied by, I guess, like, I don't even know if you'd call them like a rebel group, but like insurgents.
What, the Confederacy?
Yeah.
Well, the Confederacy consisted of all of the politicians, all of the power infrastructure.
I know,
of the South.
even so, like, you wouldn't call a coup, like, a separate nation, right? No matter.
I don't know. I think in that regard, when you have local governments at that level, I wouldn't necessarily.
Okay. Well, anyways, we went off on quite a tangent. Let's get back to the Democrats. Yeah.
Speaking of the original party of slavery.
Yeah. No, dude, I would say there's still a party of slavery. What?
There's a quote from Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah.
That says, if you can make one man, talking about white people, feel like they are more enfranchised than another man, talking about black people, then you can pick both of their pockets at the same time. And I think, that's the truth. Like, you create the type of insurrection that you have in the United States right now, and you have people focused on issues like race relations and things like that, when in reality, we're militarily.
I think a lot of it is like
once.
It's all a class thing. That's
I 100%
agree with you. It's a class thing, not a race thing.
It is the
and look, I think there are people
versus the rest of
and they're going to try to spin it as a race thing,
Mm-hmm.
because the majority of poor people in America are white,
right? And I'm not the type of person that's going to say, burn the rich, let's get rid of everybody that has power in this country.
I think you kind of have a warped view of the rich. I don't know.
I think you have people who are wealthy, and then you have the ultra wealthy, like Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos
George
works
Soros,
Jeff Bezos,
Mark Zuckerberg,
dude. All those guys work like 80 hours a week, And think how much. Look, I don't want to be fucking like shilling for
Jeff Bezos deserves to have the net worth of 3 African nations.
Well, yes. Look at how much Amazon has done for society. You can.
Amazon has done so much for society that we owe them money in taxes.
Well, no, I didn't agree with the whole,
biggest corporation in America should be the only institution not to pay taxes.
You're building a huge straw man here.
How is that a straw man? That is
I don't.
That is what goes on.
Well, I don't believe that. I don't think that the Amazon should be getting tax cuts. But
you're arguing that he deserves everything that is being awarded to him simply because he has the American economy in a vice grip.
I'm arguing that he like Amazon was like a huge innovation. It's made like a lot of stuff a lot easier. The man deserves some wealth.
Sure.
And look, you can say Facebook is becoming like Orwellian, but at the same time, it's created like a major industry.
I agree with you. Amazon, it has been a major innovation, and it has done quite a bit to the American economy. Just like Standard Oil was a major innovation, it did quite a bit for the American economy. But I seem to remember,
dude,
Amazon's not like something.
Amazon is not
Enron,
dude. Amazon is not Standard Oil. Amazon is not Enron. Okay.
I seem to remember them maybe being declared a monopoly and getting broken up.
Okay, this is something we're gonna have to agree to disagree on. I don't know. I don't think.
So even in our incredibly warped political system that we have today, there have been discussions among the House and the Senate about enacting antitrust legislation against Google, Facebook. I've never heard it talked about with Amazon, but I don't know why you wouldn't also enact it against Amazon. I mean,
I think the big thing with a lot of social media websites is they have to decide if they're a publisher or a platform. Because they are given like a lot of tax breaks and essentially a lot of legal protection because they call themselves a platform. But like they curate their content. I think that's a big thing. I think I think it's pre-existing regulations or regulations not applied equally that allows these social media companies to be so prosperous in the space they are.
And the thing is, you're getting a lot. So let's take Amazon out of the conversation here. You're getting Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, which is owned by Facebook.
Yeah.
You're getting these services for free. You have to wonder.
No. Yeah. If you're the rule is if you are getting something for free, you are the product.
Exactly. And that being said, I don't remember what it is I was reading, but data has overtaken oil as the world's most valuable resource.
Yeah.
And
did you hear about Project Nightingale or whatever?
That being said, how are these companies not the robber baron companies of the late 19th century? Like Standard Oil, like some of the railroad monopolies.
Hey, look, I tend to be...
All of those companies were created for the transport and use of oil, which was the premier commodity at that time. Now it's data. These companies are all pretty much
I guess you're right,
solely existing in their own
But, I mean,
field.
at the same time, like, it's a private company, man. And I know that's like... So
was Standard Oil.
Was
the Railroad Trust. So was Union Pacific. They were all private companies. They all got broken up because...
I don't know. Well, maybe they should break them up. Maybe they should enact antitrust laws.
Free trade, and, you can't completely dominate an industry because if you do, it makes it to where... competition is good.
Yeah.
And there's no competition with something like Facebook or with something like Google.
Yeah, I guess you're right, especially with Google. What else would you, Bing?
Yeah, right, Bing, Yahoo, come on. And, like, Yahoo... I remember a day when that was more popular than Google.
Yeah. But anyways, so Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas.
Yeah, Pocahontas
has promised to Essentially, what she said is she will be the last president elected through the Electoral College and the first president elected purely through popular vote. What do you think about, like, what is your opinion on the Electoral College?
I think that sounds incredible for the Democrats because
I don't know.
They will never lose another election.
No, listen to this. If the president is decided 100% through popular vote, well, how do I say this? There are a lot more Republicans in blue states that don't vote because they know their vote will get canceled out than there are Democrats in red states that don't vote. Would you agree with that?
Sure, but I would also say that a lot of major population centers contain a lot of Democratic votes. And I would argue that...
But what I'm saying is...
I think
those population centers are already weighted by electorates in the Electoral College. You know, they have like the delegates portion of the population size. I'm saying a large portion of that population is Republican, but just doesn't vote because they live in like California, you know, or New York, and they know their vote won't matter.
But the reason that the Electoral College was originally instituted is well, one, because of logistics. You know, it would have taken like months and months for you to count all of those votes. And
the United States it's a huge geographical area with lots of different needs from people.
Well, no, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
So the first was a logistic issue, which obviously, you know, with the information age and the fact that information travels at the speed of light now, you don't have that same logistic issue. But the other issue was that each state has its own interests, its own needs, et cetera, et cetera.
Essentially, this is what I see as what the Electoral College is put in to prevent. So there was recently like a drought in California, like there was always a drought in California, and essentially during a drought when water is scarce, you have to decide who gets the water, you know? And so, like you said, there are these major population centers that want the water, but there are also farmers, you know? And I think what ended up happening in California is a lot of, I think specifically almond farmers, there was legislation passed that said basically the water will go to like, you know, the cities, you know? So people can like, I don't know, like water their lawns or their golf course or whatever.
No, that can't be a thing.
Look, well, I mean,
I'm sure.
Look, I'm not sure this actually happened. This is like a hypothetical. In this situation, the farmer producing the food wouldn't get the water. And the population center didn't necessarily need it to water their grass. Would get the water, you know?
I would want to check on that because I would understand that you would send it to the population center first. I'm pretty sure there's like some sort of quota or something like, that people are allowed to use.
If the population center just can use it to water their lawns, you know, you want to go to the farmers.
But that's not, I don't think that's what it was being used for. I think it was being used for like sanitation and consumption, not for watering your lawns or filling your swimming pool, you know?
I don't know. We can agree to disagree on this because I was 90% sure that like literally like the farmers weren't allowed to...
Show me the facts.
Dude, I don't have the facts in front of me, but...
Fake news.
As I understood it, and look, I could be wrong, like, I encourage everyone to verify this, but as I understand it, the farmers basically got completely screwed over. Like, they weren't allowed pretty much, like, any water. And, yeah, I don't know.
Did they give them, I mean, considering a state like California, did they get any subsidies or anything as a result of, you know, the government basically ruining their crops?
I don't know, probably, but like that's not a good thing. You don't want to.
I agree. You never want to incentivize, you know, an individual to be dependent on the government. But in that sort of situation, I'd like to see some subsidies. If you know, the reason why you are not able to turn a profit for a year is literally the government's fault.
Yeah, well, I mean, but yeah, the thing is like this is what I'm talking about. If it's the Electoral College is put in place in order to essentially, like a lot of other systems in the U.S., such as the Constitution, they're essentially put in place to prevent the tyranny of the majority over the minority.
Right.
You know, like you don't want because like let's say like hypothetically you have like your farm with like I don't know maybe like 5 farmers. And you have your population center with like 50 people. The 50 people shouldn't be able to vote on what happens to the water that's in like the farmer's area, you know?
Right.
Like, And that's essentially what happens because there's a lot of, I guess, geographical diversity within the United States. Different areas of the United States have different needs. And you don't want, I guess, like California deciding what happens to the resources in like New Hampshire, or Iowa.
You just brought up a good argument for against the tyranny of the majority over the tyranny or over the minority.
Well, that's an argument for the Electoral College.
Sure, but is it really right that somebody with billions of dollars should be able to basically sound out the political voice of hundreds, thousands, millions of Americans just due to the fact
I
that
think
they
that
are more influential in the political system due to their amount of money? I would say no.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think
and I would argue that the major reason, we can go through all the reasons why we think Trump won, but I would argue the major reason is because of how much play he got in terms of the media.
Yeah,
how much
100%.
coverage he got, how literally he was everything anyone talked about.
No, if you have a scandal like every week, no scandal's going to stick.
And people often, the individual who was most popular is the one who's talked about the most. And he was talked about the most, whether it was positive or negative. He was consistently talked about.
Did you think that Trump...
if you have more money than anyone else, you have the ability to be talked about more than anyone else, even if you're the most bland, boring candidate that exists, which I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Jeb Bush. You went for Jeb Bush.
Well, I think it would be really interesting to see what happens with Michael Bloomberg, because he's going to completely self-fund his campaign, and he can dump billions upon billions of dollars into that thing.
Well, Trump has, I think Trump has raised like a record amount in campaign funds.
So what's
he's selling those like plastic straws and stuff.
What's really interesting to me is that you have campaigns like Trump's, campaigns like Andrew Yang's, campaigns like Tulsi Gabbard's, and like Bernie Sanders.
I think a lot of it is that
you're seeing a lot of money coming from individual donations, small donations from individual people.
Yeah,
I think that it says
that's probably the majority of Tulsi Gabbard's campaign funds, if not all of them.
And same with Andrew Yang. And Bernie Sanders. I think that says more than how many votes an individual is able to get, especially from like delegates in a convention. Because you need to be significantly more motivated, in my opinion, to send somebody your money than you do to go out on a Tuesday and vote for them.
Yeah, man, I just think the whole way we do debates is like fucked,
Well, I think if Michael Bloomberg is successful in his bid for the candidacy, he's going to completely change the way people run for president. Because as far as I know, he's not interested in getting involved in any of the debates. He's going to wait until Super Tuesday.
Well, here's the thing. I'm sorry.
He's going to wait until Super Tuesday to even try to get his name on the ballot. He's not going to go for any of the early primaries like Iowa or New Hampshire. I think he's taking a very interesting and strategic run at becoming president, and he's sort of tiptoed around it for a long time.
Yeah, well, this is kind of like an indication of bigger things happening. I think that the media, like right now, we're kind of seeing like a changing of the guard. Like the only reason why anybody watches like CNN or NBC or Fox News anymore is kind of because they have access. If they didn't have access, nobody would watch any of that. And look, I think, I guess, like, podcasts are becoming really popular. Like, if you're a presidential candidate and you want to essentially get your message out there, like, the message you want to get out there, if you want to actually talk about policy, actually talk about your values and defend your values, which doesn't happen in these debates, which, like I said, are basically panels where the panelists quip at each other.
Well,
if you want to do that, start a podcast. That's what I say.
Tulsi or Andrew Yang, then you go up there and actually talk about real issues.
Yeah, no, but I think it's a lot more than just being wealthy. I think the media props up people.
Oh,
like
100%.
Andrew Yang is wealthy, but
nah. There's a big difference between being a millionaire and a billionaire. Everybody on that stage is a millionaire, maybe with the exception of Tulsi. I'm not sure about her.
No, but listen.
But
here's the thing.
I promise you, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, and all of those career politicians.
Here's the thing.
The too many to count. Those are all millionaires.
If you look at Kamala, Kamala Harris, Beto O'Rourke, even Pete Buttigieg to some extent, the only reason why these people are popular at all, the only reason why, any of these people are, of notoriety is because they were propped up by the media, you know?
I just want to throw it out there. I hate Pete Buttigieg.
I'm not a huge fan of him either. I don't really want us to send, maybe it might be good to give, I don't think we should necessarily send troops to Mexico to deal with the cartels. I don't know.
I don't think that's not why I hate Pete Buttigieg. I hate Pete Buttigieg because he is the new old guard, in my opinion. He is the young,
the young corporate Democrat
candidate, but the same as somebody like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton. You know, it's like they're trying to rebrand what is the old Democratic Party and sell it back to me. The whole reason I hate the Democrats is because they are corporate. They are bought. They do not actually represent my interests.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You kind of had like I said, I think there are kind of two factions with the Democrats that kind of exist symbiotically. You have the corporate Democrats, and you have the progressive or the regressive Democrats.
I think they're if you're gonna put them into those terms, there has to be three. And the third being idealistic Democrats, like your Andrew Yangs, your Tulsi Gabbards, because there are quite a few
people. Well, I mean, man, they're calling them conservatives now, you know? Well, I said,
So, I just want to get this off my chest, because I watched this thing when I was on lunch at school today, and it's the Saturday Night Live where they I
didn't see that, but
they make fun of the debate, and I thought it was pretty funny for a little while, and then it got into Tulsi, and they brand her as a supervillain. The only
I think they're terrified of her.
Well, the only differentiating factor from her and the rest of the candidates is that she's anti-war. If being anti-war,
it's not just that. There's a lot of things. Tulsi Gabbard is anti-war. Now, look, I will preface this again by saying I would never vote for Tulsi. I don't like a lot of her policies, particularly surrounding nuclear energy and gun control and Social Security. But essentially, Tulsi is three things that the other Democrats aren't. Tulsi is pro-freedom of speech. Tulsi is pro-reaching across the aisle. Tulsi has said multiple times, I don't care, what your, political beliefs are. Yeah, I will willing to have a conversation with you. And also, Tulsi is currently suing Google.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know about this?
That's a big thing that'll make you not liked by people in Washington.
Well, yeah, okay. So here's what happened. Essentially, and this is how Tulsi tells it. If you ever listen to whenever Tulsi makes an appearance in any kind of podcast, she always brings up the story. But essentially, what happened is, after the first debate, Tulsi was apparently the most searched candidate on Google, and apparently the Tulsi campaign had all these ads set to run on Google. You know, they paid a lot for ads, and what happened is, after the debate, right after the debate, Google essentially shut off their ads. You know, for some kind of policy violation, and I think after traction around Tulsi died down a bit, they turned it back on. They turned it back on. You know, with no explanation given. You know, yeah. But so I don't know. I was thinking about this, and I really feel bad for Joe Biden. Seriously. And look, I know you can say
I don't.
He's well, of course you don't, because he's a millionaire, you know, and he has all this political power. But I don't know.
That's not why I don't feel bad for him. I don't feel bad for him because he's a stooge. I mean, he says what he is told to say, and he can't even do that much. I mean, he's so dementiated that he can't listen to his handlers.
Man, yeah, I guess he can't. But yeah, I mean, the dude's getting towards the end of his life. He's getting dementia, and what does he have to show for it?
Yeah,
you know, what does all that what did all that power and money get him? He has a really shitty son. That's it.
Instead of spending time with his grandkids, golfing, you know, maybe going to some nice island in the Caribbean, he's still propping up the war machine. Love it. What a great guy.
Yeah,
I feel so bad for him.
And look, I think, okay, this is going to sound controversial, but I want impeachment to go through. Not because I want Trump to get removed from office, but because I hope if it does go through, if it goes to the Senate, they will crack open this whole like Burisma Holdings thing, where you have all these corrupt people allegedly like Mitt Romney, Joe Biden, like.
So yeah, I was watching this thing, where basically they were talking about all the evidence that has come to light with Joe and his son in Ukraine and in China, and basically it's highly unethical, is what the guy was saying, but it's not illegal. That there was no pay-to-play going on. That really there was no way to tie Joe Biden to his son.
The issue was the
issue
issue was that Joe Biden told them to fire the prosecutor.
No, so the way it was explained to me through a YouTube video, which
there was literally a video of Joe Biden talking about how he said, "We got to get that I told him you have to get that prosecutor out of there, or we're not going to give you your funding or your aid." He literally said that.
Is that in Ukraine?
That's in Ukraine.
So the one that I was watching had to do with China, and it had to do with how his son became the CFO of this.
Burisma Holdings. That wasn't Burisma.
It was like this financial firm in China, which if you become the CFO of a billion-dollar financial firm in China, you have to have quite a bit of support from the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, of course.
And it was during Obama's presidency. And I don't remember who it was.
Well, where are you going with this, dude?
I don't remember who it was that Biden met with. But basically, it was 10 days before they were given the green light by the Chinese Communist Party and they received all this funding. It was like $1.4 billion of funding. Joe traveled to China and shook hands with some major figure in the CCP. And
that's not the issue.
You can tell that something went on there, but there's no evidence.
Yeah.
It's obviously highly unethical, but it's not illegal. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if there's much evidence of that, but there is evidence, one, that Joe Biden essentially withheld military aid to fire a prosecutor that was investigating Burisma Holdings, a company that his son was on the board of. And two, Ukrainian courts found that Ukrainian officials did collude with the DNC. Essentially, the DNC is attempting to solicit like dirt on the Trump campaign from Ukrainian officials. These are two things that, these are two things we know. These are two facts. And now, what isn't a fact is this whole, like, all the Trump stuff. It's all hearsay. The only thing that was talked about, the only phone call they have, Trump does talk about he does talk about, like, investigating why the prosecutor was fired. I don't. Did he even mention Joe Biden or whatever?
Who, Trump?
Yeah, in the phone call.
I don't think so.
Yeah, in
the transcript that was released. No, I don't think so.
No, yeah. So in the transcript that was released, he didn't mention Joe Biden. He didn't mention the aid. You know. So basically, let me make this clear.
You can see it. You can see it in the hearings. He says that the reason that he thought that there was evidence of that is because of his own conclusions. Was it Vindman?
Yeah, Vindman, yeah.
Yeah, during his testimony, he said that it was literally his opinion that this was going on.
Okay, I want to make this clear. Trump is not being accused of quid pro quo or whatever. That's just a buzzword. That's how people negotiate. You ask for something, like in exchange for something. Yeah. So what Trump is being accused of, like the serious thing, is essentially they are accusing Trump of using political power to further his personal or political. You're using the U.S.'s power to further his own personal or political interests, and in order to do that, like all they have is a phone call in which Trump talked about investigating the firing of a prosecutor that was investigating Burisma Holdings. In order to basically infer what they have inferred, you essentially have to assume, one, that Trump was not that Trump. Because here's the thing: I think it's grounds just to be concerned about corruption is enough to ask them to investigate it before you give them military aid. Would you agree with that?
Well, so in U.S. interests. In the video that I was watching, he went on to say that a lot of what the average American would consider corruption is actually totally legal. It's completely unethical, but it's totally legal.
I'm not even talking about what the average American would consider corruption. I'm talking about literally. You essentially either you have to make the assumption that Trump is worried about losing the election to Joe Biden, which, first of all, is ridiculous.
Well, so my understanding of this is that he could very easily, in which he didn't, the aid was given to Ukraine. He could very easily say, we're not going to give you aid this year. And there could be an implication that the reasoning behind not giving them the aid is because he wants an investigation to go down. Mind you, none of this happened. The aid was given.
Yeah. No, but look, I'm talking
that's
about...
not illegal. As long as you don't say, I will not give you the aid unless you investigate this person, there's no illegality in that situation.
Yeah, no, and look,
it's highly unethical, but it's not
But
illegal.
look, even if Trump wanted an investigation into this corruption, I think it's standard practice to make sure to kind of police foreign power for corruption before you give them military aid. Would you agree with that? Well, I don't know if it's standard practice, but I would say it's in U.S. interests.
Nah, not really.
I don't know, man.
Look at Saudi Arabia. Look at you're not gonna like this, but Israel. There are a lot of powers that we give a lot of aid to each year that do a lot of corrupt things. And I'm looking more at Saudi Arabia than I am at Israel.
I didn't ask that. I didn't ask if we give a lot of aid to corrupt organizations.
Is it in our interest?
I
not always.
Is it in our interest?
No, not always.
Oh, okay. Is it more in our interest to give aid to corrupt or non-corrupt?
It depends on what type of corruption
I know it's
talking
situational,
about.
but
it's
the point
totally
is
situational.
The point is,
because I would argue that the corruption in countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia benefits us.
Look, I'm President Trump. I basically spent 2 years basically having to go through this fraudulent Russia investigation. Ukrainian courts ruled Ukrainian officials were colluding with the DNC. I'm Trump. At this point, I don't really trust the intelligence community, I am going to give military aid to Ukraine, but I want to make sure I'm not going to get fucked over again, So I essentially, I'm like, hey, could you guys sort this out,
Right. So I would argue that a lot of what goes on the global stage isn't necessarily an embodiment of the individual who is in that office, but more an embodiment of what are American military and economic interests across the globe.
What do you mean?
So I've always been of the opinion, since I had a political opinion, that there isn't much of a difference between who is in that office. It doesn't matter who you are going to further American political and economic interests.
Yeah,
or you're
as
gonna
you
get
should.
Or you're going to get a bullet in your head. I just think that's the truth.
Okay, let's calm down there. Bud.
No, I think that's the truth. And ultimately, if I were in that position, I would be working to further American political and economic interests. Because if you aren't, then who's going to take over? The Chinese would much rather have an Orwellian America at the helm of global leadership than whatever the Chinese Communist Party is, because it's definitely not communist. It's more like fascist. And if there's any evil country leadership on this planet, it's them. We're talking about internment camps. We're talking about surveilling your own citizens. We do some of those things, but not in the same regard as what they do.
Something I never got from the left is the left-wing push. Now, look, I think there are certain, more libertarian ideas that leftists hold, but one thing I never understood is the push for socialism and communism. If you're the guy pushing for socialism and communism,
I don't think anybody's pushing for communism.
There are people. Communism is just the implementation of socialism.
Maybe you're edgy Antifa with beards, wearing
Elizabeth
ski
Warren,
masks.
isn't it this wealth tax?
That's not communism, my friend.
Do you support this wealth tax?
Communism is complete state control of the means of production. I don't think anybody is proposing that we completely abolish free enterprise in the United States.
Look,
nobody
Jeff,
nobody is coming after your locally franchised 7-Eleven and saying it's illegal that you sell these taquitos now.
Dude, have you read the Green New Deal?
No, I haven't.
Literally in the Green New Deal, they talk about tearing down like suburban housing to build communist blocks.
AOC is not going to be anything past these next 2 years. She has a fire that's going to burn bright and die.
Okay, then let's just talk about AOC. I'm not suggesting that communists necessarily have political power. I'm more criticizing just left-wing politics in general. This push for communism.
No, socialism. There's a difference.
Okay, socialism.
And we are already socialist.
Same thing.
We are already a socialist country.
No, we have private industry.
Do we have government paid for roads? Do we have government paid for schools? Do we have government paid for police and fire?
Okay, we're definitely disagreeing on the definition of socialism.
Do we have SNAP? Do we have government paid housing? Do we have government paid hospitals?
Listen, would you agree that there are people on the left who are communists, legit communists?
No.
What?
Sure, those people with Antifa beards that are being edgy and go to the Federal Reserve and light American flags on fire.
Okay, then I'm talking about those people, dude.
But nobody with power, nobody who has any sort of brains at all is going to say communism is a good idea. Look at Stalin, look at Mao, look at China today.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You'd have to be an idiot.
China,
who's the person that thinks oh, if I was in Stalin's position, I would have done it right. That's like someone who's yes, there literally are, dude.
No, I'm saying there's no such thing as doing it right in Stalin's position.
No, I know. That's like a right wing person saying, oh yeah, Hitler.
Exactly.
Hitler, he was really racist. But if I was running a fascist country, I would do it correct.
But okay, so I think I see Hitler as pretty far left wing too.
Dude.
I think
one of my ideas for a segment is we do a kind of like a who said it, Hitler or Marx.
I don't think you would have much of an issue.
No, but
getting Hitler confused on that.
Yeah, Hitler was very.
But no, I think the logical extreme of far right politics is anarchy, and I think the logical extreme of far left politics is dictatorship.
I think the big issue is that kind of these
and
days
politics
are kind of talked about or kind of viewed on this, I guess, two-dimensional axis, where you have left and right and authoritarian and libertarian. I think it's much more nuanced than that. I think you have a lot of other axes, and
what would be another axis for you?
Well, like I said, there are a lot of I'd have to get into moral foundations theory, but anyways. You want to talk about China?
Yeah, I do. I think the Chinese are the biggest threat to the 21st century.
I tend to agree, economically,
and I think
humanitarian basis.
I think it's even more concerning to me that our media does not discuss them as a threat whatsoever.
Yeah. There's well, of course, the media is not going to talk about the Hong Kong protests because the Hong Kong protests are waving around PkP flags and stuff like that.
But it's not just things like the Hong Kong protests. It's things like I have never seen on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox anything about China.
The Uyghur Muslims?
Well, the Uyghur Muslims, yes. China moving into the South China Sea and building unsinkable aircraft carriers in the form of islands.
Yeah, they're dredging up land. They're essentially, well, I don't know what Chinese waters extend to. It's 90 miles off the coast. They're essentially dredging up land 90 miles off the coast. Yeah.
And you never see that talked about on the mainstream media in the United States. Everything that I know about China and their expanding influence is all through things I found on YouTube and one specific channel, which is China centered entirely.
Well, I don't know how far Chinese interests extends into the United States, but
so have you ever heard of the term decoupling?
No.
So Trump,
of course, but I never known.
Well, not in the China.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Trump has mentioned that we are not looking to decouple ourselves from the Chinese economy. So right now, all of the rare earth minerals, for the most part, that go into United States defense manufacturing, building of phones, any sort of advanced electronic, comes from the Chinese. That being said, they have a vice grip on our defense manufacturing, on any advanced electronics that we manufacture, anything of that nature. We're getting the raw materials from China. That's a huge geostrategic advantage that they have over us. And I would argue we probably are looking to decouple from the Chinese, but the last thing that you would ever say if
they
you were
manipulate
looking
markets,
to do
that, they like artificially decrease prices.
Right. But the last thing you would ever...
Not to mention the incredible amount of like intellectual property theft,
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I just...
But you would never say that you were looking to decouple your economy from another economy if that is what you're doing. It's something that you just do and
free
you don't
trade
say
is always
like
desirable.
But there is no free trade with a fascist power like China.
No, there isn't. Like if you wanna run a business in China, you have to be approved by the Chinese Communist Party.
Correct. Which, let's be honest, it's the Chinese Fascist Party now. It's not.
Well, I would argue that fascism and communism are fairly similar.
Very similar, yes. But I would argue what you have going on there is much closer to fascism than it is communism.
Well, I would say the difference between fascism and communism is globalist and fascism is nationalist.
Well, I disagree. I think fascism, in a sense, there is state control of industries, but for the most part, there's quite a bit of free enterprise. Like, there's quite a bit of free enterprise in China, unless you're talking about some company that has to do with social media, some company that has to do with defense manufacturing, with housing,
as I understand it, there pretty much is no free
industries.
enterprise in China because you have to get if you want to run a business, you have to get approved by the CCP.
Well, if you own a noodle shop on the corner, you're going to get approval from the local Communist Party. It's more of like a formality than it is something that's required. And if you don't get approval, then the police are going to screw with you, this, that, and the other.
Did you see that video?
But they're not going to come to your house and kill your whole family.
Did you see that video of that interrogation?
No.
Oh man, it was fucked up. Basically, they had this guy. This was a guy who essentially posted something critical of, I think it was the Beijing police online, and they literally had him like strapped into a chair. And they were essentially like laughing at him and saying like, and the guy was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say all that. I was drunk." And they were essentially like laughing at him, like asking him to like beg them for like mercy. It's like fucked up. Like damn, like it is an Orwellian nightmare.
So
I don't want to like.
I've had this so you touched on.
And here's the thing: the further and further Chinese industry encroaches into America, the more and more you see Chinese authoritarian policies like seeping in.
Yeah, you're referring to like Disney, the NBA.
Yeah, Disney, Blizzard, the NBA.
The NBA telling their players what they can and can't say, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But so. My father and I have had this conversation many times about how China will never take over the United States as the preeminent global superpower because of their inability to innovate. And you touched on.
Well, yeah, intellectual property theft is rampant in China.
Correct.
Like, I mean, think about like all the websites where you get your like pirated media from. Those are all they're all extremely like the servers are all in China.
Well. So I think it's really interesting, the sort of mentality that I don't know if it's necessarily the type of government that exists now that's breeding this, or if it was more of Maoist Deng Xiaoping China. But I recently went to a presentation from an art teacher at one of the schools in my area, and he was a Chinese immigrant.
Yeah.
And his father worked for the Kuomintang Party, the like pre-Maoist nationalist party in China, as a bureaucrat. And when he was giving his presentation, he was giving his family history, and he mentioned how his father died due to political reasons. He didn't say my father was murdered by the Chinese Communist Party. He didn't express any sort of distaste about the Chinese Communist Party. He was even asked by a person in the audience about Hong Kong and he refused to say anything about the matter. And this is somebody who's been living in the United States for almost 30 years now.
Yeah.
And doesn't even have Chinese citizenship anymore. And he refused to say anything critical about that government. I think that speaks volumes.
Well, I mean, if you say anything critical about the government, they'll strap you into like an interrogation chair and like laugh at you.
Even for somebody
probably worse.
For somebody living in,
they'll harvest your freaking organs.
Yeah, while you're alive. Even for somebody living in the United States for 30 years who isn't a Chinese citizen anymore, they're still terrified to speak anything against that government. I mean, that's...
Dude, it's terrifying.
That says more to me than any news story that I've ever read about the place.
I mean, so here's a harrowing story. When I was in when I went to China in 2016, I went with my dad. We went to the AAA accounting conference, and it was in Shenzhen. And my dad, he's kind of like, I don't know, he's a bit of an eccentric guy, but he likes to travel around with a knife in his backpack. Like, not like a big knife, like maybe like 3 inches long.
Like a pocket knife, right?
Yeah, a pocket knife.
Like a Swiss Army knife.
And essentially what happened was he had his backpack on, we went through a metal detector, they caught him with the knife, and thank God we had a Chinese PhD student there with us to kind of like explain to them what was going on. And they must have told we were like important Americans or something like that, because, you know, we got out there in one piece. But I don't think my dad's ever be let back into China, you know?
I think it's really funny that the AAA accounting conference was in China when they're like one of 2 countries that are not accepted into the internationally accepted accounting principles.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man.
I mean, I think it just shows how much economic leverage they're beginning to have. In all industries, finance, manufacturing, social media, what have you.
Yeah. Oh, so did you hear, are you familiar with the social media site TikTok?
Yeah, they're owned by China.
Yeah, listen to this. So it recently came out that essentially TikTok was trying to create like an environment of less harassment and stuff like that. And
read the top line.
What was this? Huh. So our producer Donnie just pulled up a bill from Congress.gov, and it's regarding the detention of the Uyghurs in China. It says to counter the mass arbitrary detention of Turkic Muslims, including Uyghurs, within the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region.
Well, what? They're recognizing it. What is that going to do?
Yeah, I really don't think that this is anything.
No, but
there's no action.
There's only one news site that reported on it.
I mean, Vice has long since lost their reputation as a reputable news source.
Vice's article is just about how China is pissed off that Congress pointed out it is committing massive human rights abuses.
Okay.
So it's kind of almost like Vice is taking.
Okay, look. Well, I don't necessarily think that that a bill is going to necessarily do anything. But
it's
yeah,
not. It's something that happened that nobody reported on. So.
China is winning the trade war, though. Or no, sorry, China is losing the trade war. You know, like Chinese industry. Like, I think that we might not actually have to go to war with China to solve things. You know?
Yeah. Well,
like,
any time that we put tariffs on a good from China, it creates an incentive for another country around the world to create that good.
Did you
hear? It's a matter of time before they start doing it.
That a bill was recently passed that essentially, I don't know what exactly it did. I'm going to say something. I don't know if this is right. Like, fact check this, but it essentially barred U.S. manufacturers of essentially like policing equipment to
I saw this. So
export their goods to China.
Yep, I saw that.
And they manufacture stuff like this, like riot shields, like tear gas.
Yep.
So I mean, I think there's a pushback, and I like the Chinese economy. It's kind of like, you know, the emperor has no clothes. You know,
100%.
Like,
well, I would argue that they need us considerably more than we need them.
Yeah. I think that because, like I said, because of the innovation.
But it's only a matter of time before we need them more than they need us, and we need to do something to change that situation.
Well, I'm saying
we get to that point.
We might not have to go to war. Like,
no, I
we
agree.
might just be able to win with the trade war.
At this point in time, there is no need to go to war. I totally agree.
Yeah, I don't know.
But we're very closely reaching that apex where it's questionable whether or not we need them as much as they need us.
Yeah. Well, we're about out of time here.
All right, Walter.
Any final thoughts?
I think we had a good run today.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, this has been the Party Killers podcast. We'd like to thank our amazing producer, Donnie.
Yeah, and I would second that.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.